A few people in the boutique industry say actually the death of the big box, absolutely not. If you get it right, absolutely not.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast, and today I'm in South London with the CEO of Gymbox, Mr. Marc Diaper. We cover a number of different subjects that's very relevant to anybody that's in the fitness space, in particular brand. Why is a brand important and how you can consistently build, develop and evolve a brand over 17 years. We talk about collaborations and how to go about finding collaborations that will help you develop and expand the awareness of your business, and also to communicate with your target demographic. And we also talk about how to create a boutique within a big box. These guys are probably one of the most successful people that I've ever met about housing a number of different boutiques all under one roof. So if you're in the fitness space, there's a ton that you can learn from this episode. I hope you enjoy the recording today with Mr. Marc Diaper. So Marc, thanks for inviting us to Gymbox. It took me a bit to find it actually, because I sort of managed to sort of go around some little streets, but I saw this big yellow Gymbox billboard on there, and I thought it must be somewhere around here.
It's quite recognisable, that logo now, absolutely. But it's an important part for our brand is that logo, to be honest.
Yeah, and the other thing that's always been consistent, and I've known you guys since you started, is your sort of quirky take on your advertising and your promotion. And the one outside was pretty cool.
Yeah. Often controversial. Try not to be. I think in the early days, I mean, first and foremost, I was a fan of Gymbox before I worked here, so I've been here for 10 years. So. The marketing is what caught the eye, and I think 17 years ago you had to be disruptive, because there was the Fitness First, there was the LA Fitness, there was the Homes Places, and to be different you have to create that kind of disruption. Less of it now, but really? It's still there. It's still there. The tone's there. Will never go as part of the brand. But when you're 17 years old, you've created a brand already. You don't need to be as disruptive. Disruptive, not offensive, I think is probably the way forward. But even that one you saw, it's raised eyebrows, absolutely.
Do you think now, I suppose it's within, what, you've been going 19 years now, is it? About
17 this year.
17.
Yeah.
Do you think over that time, also you kind of have to be a little bit more politically correct, so you don't offend the people, or the type of people that come into your club sort of not easily offended? What would you say?
I think everyone's easily offended, to be honest. I think that's the rule for us, really, is that gut feeling is important, and if the gut feeling is offensive, then don't do it. We don't just sit in an office as 3-4 directors going, oh, that's funny, let's throw that out there. We ask the teams as well, and the average age of our employees is 26. I'm 41, the other director's a couple of years older. So, when I started here, I was 31 and our average age was 26, so I was closer to the demographic. As I've got older, I've had to make sure that we keep that tone right, because we still need to speak to an audience that's probably younger than what I am now. It's important to us to be disruptive still, a distinct tone, but not to be offensive.
How do you get that balance then? Do you have to have people of that demographic as part of your team to kind of steer you through those things? I know when I have jokes with my dad sometime, I'm like, you can't say that nowadays, Do you have that kind of, different ages and conversations a lot?
We do. We actually share our big campaigns with members as well. So Rory, our marketing director, he'll meet the agencies, we'll go through the creatives, and then it has to have a kick to it, the marketing. I mean, you spend a lot of money on marketing, so you don't want to throw out generic lines. The industry has always been renowned for having quite poor marketing, to be honest, and it's where Gymbox was very different to start with. So where gyms will still throw out the new year, new you, and stuff that's been going now for 30 years probably. It's important to be different, but as time's evolved, you're right, what my dad would think is right, what I think right, and what my son would think right are completely different. So we talk to the whole audience. The average age of our members 32, average age of the staff's 26, and I'm 41. So you get a spectrum there. My son's 16 and he's now into the gym, and he throws things at me that I've never heard of before. You know, why are you using email, Dad? I'm like, well, because we use email. He's like, don't need to use email. So yeah, we asked the team. So we've got 30 in head office. We'll often throw the lines on the table and say, right, guys, what do you think? 9 times out of 10 we will agree, but someone's got to make a decision at the end of the day, and it's usually myself and the board and the exec team. But yeah, we make sure we include everyone on that. Yeah.
And you have, like I say, you have been generally controversial, and you've got the headlines. Do you think in that period of time that you've been in the space that you just have to be a little bit more, people want to be wrapped up in a little bit more cotton wool than what they used to be? Or is that just, you know, is it just doing things in a different way?
I think it's just life. I think you know, what I find offensive may be different to you, different to my wife, different to my children. You know, I think you have to be conscious. Absolutely, you don't want to alienate yourself as a brand. It's certainly not what we're about. You know, if you look at our gyms and you tour the gym space, they're incredible. I mean, you've got you know, a series of boutiques under one roof, effectively, and we need to make sure that the marketing and the gym match together. Absolutely, but you know, in a crowded market, how do you stand out? You stand out through marketing and PR. That's how we've always done it, and that's why we'll always do it. We just mature our tone slightly over the years.
Is your target audience the same as it always has been? Like, have you followed that kind of group, or have you matured with the people that you know sort of you started with? How would you?
It's exactly the same. So I'm big into data. So when I started 10 years ago, these are sorts of things I was pulling out. It's quite a phenomenal brand, as I say. You know, it's great to work for a brand you're a fan of to start with, because it makes life a lot easier. Easier to get out of bed in the morning, go to work when you enjoy what you're doing. So we pulled the data apart, and the average age then is exactly the same as the average age now. So split male, female, very similar. Everything's very similar to what it was. I think we've just been fully aware as an exec team that we get older. You know, and that's why you have to start pulling the kind of cooler crowd as such. The agencies you work with from a marketing perspective, they know our kind of brand onion. We have these kind of brand onion, brand values. That dictates where our brand goes. And if it's not on track with those values, then we don't do it effectively. So I think that helps keep everything on track from a focus point and demographic perspective. I mean, ultimately, our target market is 18 to 35. That's the core market. 18 to 40, absolutely. We've got members in their 40s, 50s, 60s, but that core market, as per most gyms, to be honest, I'd probably say ours is more akin to a boutique age than a Virgin Active or a Pure Gym or a Fitness First.
Do you find then that kind of people will drop off at a certain time then in general, you know, with that sort of age, you know, maybe when they sort of have children or change their stage of life, then is that kind of how it goes? Or?
Yeah, I think if you look at the demographics, so it's very much young singles, young couples in the city living, earning good money effectively. So I think naturally with that, you know, when you have a relationship, you have children, you know, you may not want to stay in London, so therefore you may drop out and move out of the city anyway. Not sure exact detail behind when they do drop out the other end. It's interesting that it's stayed consistent for the last 17 years. Yeah.
So with that then, because you guys I suppose have been in the middle of this boutique space, and I guess a lot of the younger people that seems to be the way of working out. So I suppose, how have you as a business navigated your way through staying relevant in terms of trends, but also being able to respond to that, particularly in London where there's boutiques on, you know, every corner? How have you as a business, you know, what are some of the thought processes that you went through, and how have you sort of managed to stay relevant?
So I think David, who's been with the business from day one, looks after our product. So I think first and foremost, we've always tried to stay ahead of the curve in terms of the actual product. And when I say product, you think about, you know, 2.5 million swipes a year. Of that, 1.5 million will be doing classes. So our programming product is really, really important for us. So if you think about the brand USPs, so the studio product is one, and we spend a lot of time, a lot of resource in that area. We have 4 in the studio team at head office, someone that heads it up. We have a full-time creative person in there. We have a full-time manager who then looks after the club's studio managers to make sure everything's on point in club. And then we have somebody doing the training for auditions and analysis of data. So we change our timetable every 4 months with 5 new creatives. And I think that's what we're renowned for. When we go out to our market, our members, and we ask them what they love about us, it's the variety and its uniqueness of our classes. We invested heavily a couple of years ago in the categories of classes. We got to 8 categories from, as we say, holistic to sadistic, effectively. And we have somebody heading up, a master trainer head up each category for us now as well. When the brand was created in 2003, it had to be different. And I still say, I'm not massively keen on the word boutique, if I'm being honest, but we're kind of the original boutique because we were doing things back in 2003 that no one else was doing. We were having, boxing classes with drag queens. We were having, functional training classes with, top athletes, and it was such a variety of instructor for us. And I think the introduction of boutiques for us was great because what it did, it made us refocus again just to make sure everything was right in the business. So 2013, I think around about 2013, sort of Barry's came in, One Rebel came in, and we just did a sense check and said, right, okay, where are we? What are our USPs still? Are they strong enough? Are our older clubs, have we spent enough money on CapEx to make sure they're up to the standard? And we toured the estate effectively and made a few changes. We've always heavily invested in CapEx anyway, every year to make sure the estate's up to date. Because, if you said to me today, let's go and meet at one of your clubs, what one? I wouldn't send you to anywhere specifically. I'd say, okay, where do you want to meet? Because they all should be as good as each other. And when you're only 11 clubs, it should be like that. So it was a brilliant sense check for us to say, okay, let's pull apart everything. Let's pull apart our class programming. Let's pull apart our website. Let's pull apart our studios. What did we change? Well, we changed, you see in the studio here, we changed, we made them more of a luxury feel, I'd say. We created storage areas off of the studio floor. The original studios 17 years ago, the same as LA Fitness, same as Fitness First, would have been a studio space, and then some Fight Clubs bags, and then some steps, and then some dumbbells, and suddenly your studio space is so small you can fit 15 people in a class. So we made the studio spaces bigger. We built storage in, so it felt like a different feel. We also then heavily invested in tech. So with the system we used, it was quite archaic, if I'm being honest. When I started, it was literally tickets. You go to reception, you get your ticket for your class and written ticket and go in. I mean, from a brand perspective, there's nothing else out there, but that's how it worked. Now you come into the club, you can self-swipe, it checks you in class automatically. If you come up to the studio to do a class, there's an iPad outside the class, you can see that you checked in. If you're not, you can check yourself in. And if you want to drop into the class, you can also put a code in and then you go to the class. So we invested from that perspective to make the user experience much smoother. And what we were finding, we were getting pinch points at reception. Unlike a boutique, where they have, say, 30 or 40 people in one go, they come in, they get changed, they wait in the holding area, go into a class. We have 250 people through in an hour. So we've had to think about the whole experience to say, right, when they come into the club, where do they go? What's the route? How do we use tech to improve the service side of things? And how do we make our reception areas more efficient so it controls the traffic a bit better?
Have you done anything to, obviously group exercises is important. Is that because that's just what your members want and you're delivering what they want, or have you seen any data to show that those people who are doing those group programs are just better, well not better members, but they're better for business and they stay longer at all?
They do stay longer. If you think about our membership base, 50%, slightly over 50% of our members do classes. Now, generally they'll just do classes. 30% will use open gym and 20% do personal training. So we know the categories of members. We can very, very easily target those studio members to make sure we're giving them the right information. The class categories really help because we know how many categories of classes they're doing. And luckily for us, when you look at the boutique side of things, our members do way more than one category of class. So they don't just stick to functional, they don't just stick to dance. They do it across, and we've got percentages for 1, 2, 3, 4, and class category, which I sit and analyse with our group fitness director. And that's really important for us because what it shows is there's still a demand for good quality programming across more than one area. Spin has always been popular. It was popular when I was teaching it 18 years ago, and it's still popular now. I don't think those trends will change necessarily. Functional's taken off in the last 2-3 years. It's one of our most popular categories now. And I think having the dance and having the holistic and having the aerial, and it just adds to the all-round experience and options for a member.
Do you deliberately try and cross-sell other classes to members, or do you allow them just to figure that out themselves?
We do a bit of that as well, yeah, absolutely. Because we know if I can get somebody into a personal training session, for example, and I can get someone into a functional class, and I can get somebody into a Look Better Naked class that we run, they're going to come more often. So, we don't run the old system model of twice a week for 8 weeks. We know our members averagely come more than the standard gym. So the average use of our member across the whole base, even non-active, is about 8 visits a month. So I think that's down to the program, it's down to the product, it's down to the USPs, and I touched on one of them, which was the classes. The others were the environment, live DJs in the evenings. We've done that for 17 years. Spend a lot of money on DJs now. But not just the DJ you throw in there, the DJs that are vetted. We look at the style of music. Does it fit the club? Does it fit the area? We work with a company to do that and create that for us. Same as the music in the clubs. It's all created for us. It's not a system we just pop on and go. It speaks to our demographic. It's all these touch points that are important for us. Free weights areas, the equipment we use in the free weights areas, the boxing rings we use, the affiliations we have with Grand Union for Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, which used to be part of the Gracie Academy, and links to CrossFit as well. So they're all USPs of ours. But if we can get members doing as much as possible, then they'll stay with us longer.
With the group exercise, in terms from the instructor perspective, my guess from what I've seen is, and I think you mentioned it downstairs with your jiu-jitsu, obviously people are coming there for the trainers. Have you found it becoming more difficult over the last few years, where there are a lot more studios opening and I suppose more of a demand on that type of trainer, and how do you go about making sure that you got the best ones inside your facility?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge, because at 1, 2, 3 clubs, it's quite easy, to be honest, because we now do 1,500 classes a week. So to keep consistency there has become more difficult. As I say, we've invested more time, more money in the right master trainers. They get out into the marketplace, spot the right talent. But not only that, is we've now got like an academy coming through our internal teams. So, when we talk about boutiques and what they've brought, the boutiques now are talking about, I listen to some of your podcasts, and talking about, we get actresses and actors and musicians. We've done that since 2003. That we don't recruit on CV, we recruit on personality, attitude, always have done. So it isn't new to us. But what we're doing now is we're spotting these kind of superstars internally, who've got the personalities, got the charisma, and we're putting them through training. So we'll get them onto level 2 training courses. We're getting them into, cycle club or wherever they want to go. Now, the challenge we have got is that, at 1,500 classes a week, your boutiques do pay more. Right. So what we're finding is we're having to make sure we've got this academy coming through all of the time, because at some stage in the journey, some of them do say, actually, do you know what, Barry's paying me £100 an hour. We're not going to pay £100 an hour. But as long as you've got somebody else coming back through, it's not been too much of a problem because of the volume of classes we can offer them. So we can offer instructors, some class instructors teach 40, 50 classes a week. I mean, they're not going to get that from a boutique. As the boutique grow, may become more of an issue, but as long as we've got this talent pool coming through, I think we'll be okay on that side.
If you had to define your business, and I'll sort of explain this question, I suppose if you look at traditional gyms like you, and we'll go into it in a moment, but you started at LA Fitness, and we mentioned earlier how Fitness First were, I think, invested in your first club originally. So there was this kind of model back 15, 20 years ago of a fitness club, which was basically around equipment, and you had your strength and your cardio and your studios. How would you now define what Gymbox is? And because you've been one of the few businesses that's retained that kind of, you're not low cost, and you're sort of in that, I suppose, upper middle section of the market, which seems to have been wiped out in England in most cases. How would you define yourself, and how do you think you've been able to sort of survive where others haven't?
I think we sit in that mid-premium bracket, and I think the industry is, I mean, as I say, when I started 18 years ago, there was LA Fitness, there was Fitness First, there was Homes. I mean, there wasn't much out. I mean, LA Fitness was the original affordable kind of fitness, effectively. Now, I think what happened to LA Fitness, and I was there for 8 years, so I got out January 2009, and I could see what was happening in LA Fitness. I was looking after a region, and I kind of started to not buy into the process, because it was, I had enough of dressing up as a Christmas pudding at Christmas on a spin bike in the middle of Fareham Town Centre. It just wasn't for me anymore. So, but I mean, I loved the brand at the time. I lived and breathed it. I had purple blood, as they said back then, and there's some great people I met there. But in terms of where it's gone, it was, I mean, I said to you earlier, I remember being in LA Fitness Southampton, and we had every treadmill was set to 20-minute timer. The club was so big, I think it was 12,000 square foot, had a swimming pool as well. We had about 3,500 members in there who were all active and using the club. And we had this queuing system for the treadmills, so it was literally stand there, okay, one person off, the next one on, and you just wouldn't get away with it in this world. That'd be crazy. So in terms of where it's come from, to, I think, as I said earlier, the Gymbox has always been different. Now what we have changed, if you look at the clubs we're opening now, so Elephant and Castle, for example, the footprint of our layout is very different to the original footprint. Okay, so Fitness First, as you said, invested in the original club. Richard, who was the founder, took a lot of advice from him initially, and back then it was resistance, cardio, big cardio areas then as well, free weights, and then 2 small studios with both sprung flooring, no creative lighting. So the Gymbox brand wasn't built around, it was built around the attitude of graffiti. It was very different from that perspective. And what's changed now is that you go into the clubs now, and your footprint's hugely changed. Big rigs on the gym floor for functional training, big holistic studios, big functional studios. So from that perspective, I think we have just changed as fitness has evolved through David, who looks after the product for us, to stay ahead of the curve from that perspective.
One of the things that I think is interesting about what you guys do, and I get to travel around a lot of gyms, and we were talking earlier, when you have your big functional training areas and you've got the rigs, you can't move in your clubs. There's just no space to do anything, which is interesting, because a lot of facilities, they put in this great stuff, and yet members don't go in and use it, and they're not as successful as what they'd hoped to be. What do you guys do to kind of drive that? Is that just the nature? You've got an educated member and they know what to do, or is a lot of that by design?
Yeah, we're renowned for our programming. That's what we're recognised for mostly. So I think what's great is when you go into a club and it's busy in the evening, we picture it as 6 or 7 studio spaces. So when you see the rig and there's 30 people on it, they're in a controlled studio space. You go into the conditioning studio, there's 30 people in a space, there's 20 in the boxing ring, there's 20 in the dojo. So suddenly you've got 100, 150 members that are all in classes. We run those classes back to back. So Victoria's got 163 classes a week. So the rest of the space then is for your personal training and for your free weights users, effectively. So it's actually quite a controlled. It looks hectic, but it's actually quite a controlled environment, because 50% of your swipes or slightly more are coming into a controlled studio or class environment.
Right.
Just on the gym floor.
And I guess then that creates this atmosphere that hits you of just people all working out. I didn't think about it like that, but so it's kind of like there's all these studios without walls necessarily. going on.
I think it's important for us to create that atmosphere and environment. We probably did that 3 or 4 clubs ago and said, actually, why put a wall there? You've got this 30 person functional class, which looks phenomenal, or hang tough, and we're doing grip classes, and we're doing ninja style classes. As a prospect walking or a guest walking, you're like, wow, you kind of look around, and as they say, it's like a playground. If you're into fitness, it's like a playground. Now, it can be intimidating, and we appreciate that. So we ensure that during the tour process, that potential prospects or guests understand what it is. It's not just seeing 150, 200 people just throwing weights around. They're in a class environment. And actually, it helps us because what we say is, our class aim at all levels. So when we tour the club, we'll also look at the goals and the needs of the prospect, but we'll look at them and say, right, okay, we've got these 8 class categories. You're into doing functional training. Here's the best 3 for you to look at, and we can guide them on that kind of journey to start with.
Do you find that you're able to bring in those relatively sort of inexperienced gym goers? Because certainly when you look around the club, there's a lot of people who do know what they're doing and they look the business. Do you aim to get that balance, and do you think you're successful at those, I call them, I suppose, novices?
Yeah, so 20% of our members every month haven't used the gym for 3 years or never used the gym. Wow. So for those, we established that at the start of the tour, and for those, we'll give them a bit more guidance. So the sales team will understand the needs, and we'll guide them along, if they're into classes, or even if they're not into classes actually, because what we find a lot of the time, our class split is 60-40 female to male. Now, a lot of other gyms are way more weighted towards the female user. So if it's a guy and he's not been to the gym for 3 years, we'll sit and have a conversation about what they enjoy doing, what they did before, and we'll try and get them into classes, because we know that once they're into classes, the class programming changes on a regular basis, they get hooked on the classes and they'll continue doing them. If they don't want to do that and they just want to use, say, a free weights area, we'll push them along the personal training route, and obviously we do introduction to personal training, because we know, again, then as a member, they'll achieve their goals quicker, and they'll stay longer as well from a personal training perspective. And actually, penetration for us on personal training is important. 20% is pretty good. And again, I think that comes down to how we recruit personal trainers. We've got a head of personal training. We're very particular about who we recruit into those teams as well.
In terms of the data that you look at, have you seen a shift over, like, since you've been here, 10 years, is that right?
Yeah.
Have you seen those trends, like the PT and the group training trends, change, or have they always sort of been reasonably consistent?
All been pretty consistent, really? Actually, yeah. The studio product is, again, slightly different, because there's definitely been way bigger spike towards functional. And you look at our timetables, we wouldn't put on 5 functional classes or 5 holistic classes over functional or aerial, for example. So we follow the demands absolutely with that. But from a PT perspective, again, it's always been there from a recruitment perspective, of getting the right PTs on board. The PTs that come to us usually come with experience, they usually come with a client base, and actually we retain PTs for a fair period of time. Some PTs in bank and hold them with us for 10 to 15 years. So it's really important for us, though, absolutely important, because it creates that stickiness for the brand. And then if you add on parties, events, we get 750 members turn up to a party, pay £20 a ticket. We have break dancers, we have DJs, we have bands, we have snake charmers. It's just a crazy environment, and I think for us that's really important, again, for the stickiness of the brand to continue to do those things 2-3 times a year. I used to go to some of them, and they were in these sort of nightclubs in East London. I went many years ago, but is that a key part of what you do then? That sort of going out to a bar and having, it's almost like a sort of a little rave that all the cool people sort of went to. It's that kind of work hard, play hard environment. You look at the average age, let's say, of a member. Our members don't come in and go, right, I'm going to do a workout and I'm going to go away and I'm going to eat a salad. They're going for burgers after their workout. They're going to bars, they're going to restaurants, they're socialising. Socialise as groups internally after a class. So I think we're a lifestyle brand. We're not a health club. We're a gym. We're a gym. We're a results-based gym. For being honest, people that come to us come get results. The average use is more than double the national average of swipes. So we know the product and programming's pretty strong, but the social side of things is really important for us. So we're just about to put our first juice bar into Finsbury Park. So we're building Finsbury Park, start building that hopefully next week. And we've linked with Press.
Right.
So Press are going to go in there as the first site, and we're hoping we're going to backfill and roll our sites because, again, the social thing's always been big, but the original Gymbox model was use as much real estate as possible for equipment and members. Now, we're seeing that the social side of things, even internally in Elephant and Castle, you've got probably 15 seats there. People sit there on their laptops. So let's make it a better environment to do that, a bit longer in dwell time. And then when prospects come in, it feels like a probably even cooler environment.
Well, one of the things I'd like to talk about is your view on collaborations. And so whilst you have this very distinctive brand, and I know it's sort of one of the backgrounds of Richard, you do a great job at putting together that brand and seeing it through every part of your business. It's interesting that you also seem to be, you also seem to kind of work with and almost promote other brands, and these collaborations like this. There's Goldie, I've noticed, and Gymshark. Tell us a little bit about, one, the philosophy behind that, why you've decided to do that as opposed to your own, and then two, what are some of the sort of interesting success stories you've had with collaborations?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's where you start with why you become necessarily a cool brand as such. It sounds a bit cheesy, cool brand, but we've been voted one of the UK's coolest brands for 7 years in a row now through Cool Brands and Brand Network. We were also voted last year with some competition alongside the other boutiques and gyms in London, London Lifestyle Awards, Best Fitness Brand in London for 2019. So these collaborations, they work both ways. We have approaches from other brands who want to work with us, which is great. And then we cherry pick the brands we work with because by association, we want to work with like-minded people. We can tap into their client base, they can tap into our client base. And I think you only get to do that by having a really strong identity and a really strong brand. And that's why when you walk around the clubs, you'll see every single touch point, from the signage on the towel bin to the reusable plastic bags. Everything is branded and branded right. And these cool brands that come in to look at you notice this stuff. When they walk the gym with you, they'll comment on how you do your brand and how it works. So I think it's a really important part for us. We don't do too many. We don't do too many collaborations. Maybe the Hoxton Hotel, maybe Grind Coffee, maybe Gymshark, as you say, Goldie. But we'll look for the right opportunities, and if they come up, we'll absolutely work with them.
Tell us a little bit, I don't know, I'm not sure whether it's launching this Friday, if I'm correct, but tell us a little bit about the Gymshark story and what you're doing with those guys.
Yeah, so they're launching their first pop-up store in Covent Garden. And I know I believe their head of PR is a member. So great that she's chosen Gymbox to train in. So I think there was a natural draw to us from that perspective. But I also think what we're doing there is in their space, we're going to be running a class programming timetable. So you're going to get everything from some holistic to some functional to conditioning classes in there for free. I think we sold out. I think it was 13 minutes. The whole of the program was sold out in 13 minutes, which is phenomenal. And to be honest, I like to think that's both of the draws, but Gymshark they're hot, very, very hot right now as well. So, but I think that's a perfect example of how brand collaboration can work really well. It benefits them because they know they're going to get quality class programming from a certain standard of instructor with the variety and uniqueness of classes, not just a run class or they like that kind of cheapness and tone of the brand as well as the class.
Authenticity about it, yeah.
Absolutely. And it works great for us from a brand association perspective. Anybody going through the Covent Garden area and checking the store out, see a Gymbox logo, pop in, the association. So hopefully it will generate some data release off the back of it, but if not, great brand association anyway.
Yeah. And what about Goldie?
Yeah. So it came through David actually. I contacted David, who works with Goldie. But it was, Yo Gangster, the name is brilliant for a start. It kind of really fits our brand. I think when you're looking at brands you want to collaborate with, it has to fit your identity as well. It can't be, just branding, partnering with somebody because they're a big brand. You know, it has to fit with what you do as well. And I think Goldie was perfect for that. He was huge on the London scene back in the day. He's gone down the holistic route now himself, so he's living in Thailand now. He's got children over there. He still DJs, but he's got this kind of, he teaches yoga, and they've got this, you know, it's crazy. So when the opportunity came up to a collaboration, it made perfect sense. We had 75 members in Farringdon on the track, all doing yoga, and Goldie was DJing throughout the whole session. So if you can get those brand collaborations, they're perfect for us.
Yeah. How do you use those collaborations? Like, is it an opportunity to kind of capture a lot of information and get some press and just promote your brand in association with someone like that, or is there other reasons that you do it?
I think everything else falls into place. I think you have to do what's right for the business. You know, I don't sit there with my sales director and say, you know, we've got Gymshark next week, it's going to be... I like doing it because it's right for the business and having these collaborations. So I think the partnerships from a press and PR perspective, absolutely, always help. I think, as I said earlier, from a lead generation perspective, you may or may not see some footfall. You know, the same as when we do these big billboard campaigns. You know, they're branding exercises for us, and to link with the right brands from a collaboration perspective by association makes you cooler as a brand.
Yeah. Do you plan to each year to say, right, we're going to look for a couple of collaborations, or is it very organic? If something comes along, you'll do it. If not, nothing happens this year.
Yeah, I set out in our strategy to the other directors. I'll set out my kind of strategy for the year. Everything from, you know, tech to brand collaborations to parties to events. What I'd like to see us do. And then the team will go out and find them. But we won't do it if it's not there. You know, if we can find 2 and they're great, then we'll do 2. If we can find 4 and they're great, brilliant. If not, I don't want to partner with someone for the wrong reasons. So we're very, very selective about who we work with, absolutely.
How do you work as a sort of, I suppose, a senior team when you think about these? Because do you spend a lot of time kind of chewing it over and saying, you know, is this going to be right? Is this right for our demo? Because I guess there's a lot of different things going on. You know, if you look at Goldie, for example, then I know certain people don't know who he is. I obviously grew up with him and I suppose he's a little bit older than your target demographic. Is that something you have to kind of think carefully about?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the team and how we work, I always say to the team, we run a really simple business. It's not easy, but it's simple. And we're 11 clubs, we're 250 employees. We're not a huge business. So a lot of these decisions get made on WhatsApp. I mean, you know, myself, David, Rory, Scott, you know, we'll chat with Hannah. You know, I'll see something in the press, and I'll say, what do you think? And Dave will say, no, it's terrible. Or, you know, he'll come back to me and I'll say, you're too old for this. You know, whatever it might be, you know, we're constantly on these things. So I think you know when a collaboration's right. You know, Gymshark, for example, is brilliant. I mean, I think I've got huge admiration for the brand. I think Ben's super aspirational, and what he's created there from his bedroom is phenomenal. And I love working with brands that have got a story as well. And a Gymbox story for me, when I came on board with Gymbox, I met Richard and David originally. As I say, we were really small. It really excited me, you know, walking into the club, seeing how the design, hearing the music, the you know, back at LA Fitness, and again, not knocking LA Fitness because I had great times there, but you know, I'd sit in a regional meeting and someone would get told off for having a nose piercing. You know, that's the sort of, you know, Gymbox was completely opposite. So
it was compulsory to get your nose pierced before you joined.
Absolutely, and a neck tattoo as well at the same time. So, but you know, it was, looking back now, it was so archaic, the processes that you had in most health clubs. And to think that a member wouldn't want to join you or stay with you because someone's got a nose piercing. I mean, it seems crazy now. Now you go to all the top hotels and boutique hotels, and it's just about attitude. So yeah, so as I say, we just share lots and lots of information. You know, my journey to work in the morning is I do Headspace every morning. So I do 15-20 minutes Headspace every morning. I've got a 2-hour commute, so it works. I then do urgent emails and I work on strategy. So that strategy might be, for example, this morning on the way in, I was looking at international. I was looking at the Gyms International, Boutiques International. Coming to work, and as I'm coming into work, I'm dropping things out that I'm seeing to our marketing director or to a product director. And then on the way home, I pretty much clear down my emails and database. But it's always switched on. It never switches off. You know, Richard, again, the founder, non-exec now, if he sees a good idea, he'll WhatsApp me or he'll phone me. And I think that will never go. That should never go, because that's how you stay, you evolve, you keep evolving. Absolutely.
How did you get into Gymbox, and what's kind of helped you, raise to the top spot, I suppose, over that period of time, do you think?
It's interesting. So I got asked this question recently, and I've never really thought about it. You kind of just get to where you've got to, and you're there. But what we've done actually, I'll go back a stage actually to give you a bit of insight into Gymbox and kind of how I've got here, I suppose, and we can start at the beginning. But what's important for me, I got asked a question by a receptionist, and every Wednesday morning I do a brand induction. So every new starter in the business, every week, they only start on Wednesdays, and I'm the first half an hour for every new starter in the business. And it's so important, because what I'll cover at that half an hour will be the brand history and where we're going as a business, and then the brand values. And those brand values, we didn't have them originally. When I started in the business, I mean, I've never had a job description. I've been here for 10 years, which is great. But we've never had that, those kind of brand values. They were there, but because Richard and David were in the clubs every single day, you didn't need them. Now, when I started, I was in the clubs every single day. You didn't need these brand values. So we created these brand values about 18 months ago now, and we live and breathe these values. And they weren't written by me and the exec team, they were written by the team, the staff. Everyone from a cleaner through to a general manager. Got them all in a room, beers, pizzas, and said, right, with our super talented copywriter, let's come up with some brand values. The reason I mention that is because in the brand induction, I got asked by one of the receptionists, how did you get to where you got to? And I felt like I needed a better answer than just worked hard, I felt like I needed, a bit of a story. And I was saying to my wife, I was saying, I'll actually have to think about this, and I put it down to a few things. One is hard work. If I'm being honest, I still believe in being the hardest worker in the room. So I have a 2-hour commute in, 2-hour commute back, and I'll do probably, my day could be 12 and 15 hours a day. The reason I don't mind doing that is because I'm still massively hungry. I'm massively hungry to be successful. And you think, people say to you, where do you want to get to? What is success? What is that kind of end goal? I've never hit it, if I'm being honest, because I think it's just built into you. My dad had businesses. My dad was very successful. He recently retired 2-3 weeks ago, and I think you've got it or you haven't. And I don't think I would be any different delivering milk than I am now. I'd be doing it faster than everyone else, So hard working, absolutely. Being hungry, always being hungry, and being humble. I think being humble was, as I said to the team, I've never had too much of a hard time at Gymbox, because when things are great and the numbers are flying, I don't shout very loudly. And then when things aren't going so great and you sit in a board meeting and they say, what's different? You say, nothing. So it works both ways. So they're the 3 things I gave to the team about, how to be successful. The other benefit really is that I've done every role in the industry. So I started at LA Fitness in 2002.
How did you come into that? What was you?
So I started as a personal trainer and fitness instructor. My really, really early days of working, which is probably where I learnt most actually, I was 15 and I worked in a sports shop. It's a specialist sports shop in Southampton called Step Into Sport. And when I say specialist, it was, measuring feet, making sure the width of the football boot's right, making sure the width of the squash shoe's right. I mean, it was a real tailored kind of approach. The guy that owned it owned 4 sports shops, John Conning, massively inspirational guy. He didn't know it at the time. He used to give me such a hard time. But my first job in the morning as a Saturday boy, as they called me back then at 15, was to sweep the pavement outside the shop, remove all the chewing gum from the path and clean the windows. And John used to come out and inspect that afterwards. So I'd be scraping the chewing gum off, sweeping the right, and then I'd clean the windows, and I still clean windows now and I see stuff on them. So it was a technique to the squeegee. Once you've done the squeegee, you then have to get a newspaper, screw the newspaper up, and it gets rid of the smudges. So John would come and inspect that. But John taught me some massive lessons in customer service. So, you know, John always treated me and said, actually, you know, when a customer comes in the front door, unless you know them, you never greet them with hello. It's always good morning or good afternoon, good evening. He taught me about the eye contact. He taught me a huge amount. So that was my early days, and I was really into fitness. I was at Southampton Football Club for 7 years as well, and I got released at 16. So I worked with John from 15 to 18. When I finished college, I actually didn't want to go to university. John offered me an assistant manager role at a sports shop, looking after 4 sports shops. I think he gave me a pay rise of about 20p an hour. I think it was about £3.60 an hour or something like that as an assistant manager. After 3 months of doing it, I realised that I wanted to go to uni. So I applied last minute. I think I just had spent time there, and being a Saturday boy to being there full time was very, very different. But I took valuable lessons away with me. Did uni, and that's part of my sports degree at uni. I covered personal training, nutrition, and everything else. So I finished uni. I actually went to work for a newspaper for a year to save some money to go travelling. So I worked selling advertising, the hardest job I've ever done, door to door, selling front page, page 3, page 4, whatever it might be for a newspaper. And I started to develop my own sales approach to you know, I was given some training, some basic training, but it was trial and error. You know, it was knocking front doors and going in and being nice to people, really. So I did a year of that, went travelling, came back, and my dad said to me, and as I say, he's done very well in business. I was only 22, and he's like, you need to settle down. I think back then, that was the done thing. It was, come on, think about it, you've been skiing for 6 months, great, what are you doing for the summer? So I'm going to Ibiza. It's like, do you not think you need to settle down here and, you know, start thinking about your career? So I actually went and did my nutritional qualifications and sports therapy qualifications. So I went into LA Fitness as a fitness instructor. It was back in the days when you could do fitness instructing during your hours, and then out of your hours you could personal train. So I did that for a while, and I then was just successful. So you know, probably had the right attitude. I worked hard, as I say, and I was hungry to continue progressing. So I went from fitness instructor to fitness manager. I went from fitness manager to deputy manager to operations manager. I then stepped into sales management, did sales as well for a while, general management, and then regional management. So that was my kind of career with LA Fitness, and I moved roles probably every sort of 12 to 18 months with LA Fitness through progression path. 2008 actually, I was starting to not enjoy the process at LA Fitness, and it was because, you know, back then it was standing on the street corner, you know, telling you guys to go out and take as many names and numbers as possible, knowing full well that some of your sales guys were going out and getting a phone book back then and putting names and numbers in there, and you're going, what's wrong with your conversion on outreach leads? And they're like, oh, I don't know, you know, can't get hold of people. So I didn't buy into the process so much anymore, left on great terms, I'm still in contact with the guys now. And I started my own business. I started a consultancy business, basically going into independents, because I saw this gap where these independents, they couldn't afford these big budgets for marketing. But they were sitting there and suffering. LA Fitness, I mean, I think some of the clubs we opened with LA Fitness, they closed down a number of independent operators. So I went into these guys and said, look, you know, here's my experience. I can do everything from, you know, structuring, operation procedures, staffing structures, and my real strength was in delivering numbers. And at LA Fitness, you know, I was lucky enough to win quite a few awards there. We won the Flame Awards with my club when we were in Fairham. You know, actually backstage, Fred gave me a really tough time. So we look like role models in business. Fred's one of those. But Fred came down to Southampton when I was operations manager, and I knew he was coming down, so I made sure the club's looking spot on from an operational perspective. And if you know Fred, and you know Fred probably cares less about operations, and he's so sales driven. But anyway, he said, right, how's the club looking? I said, great. And he said, right, let's go for a walk. And he must have found the only bit of dust in the whole of the gym. And he gave me a really hard time. I'm talking a proper grilling on this. And when we won the awards, he said to me afterwards, he said, do you remember that conversation I had with you? And he said, yeah. He said, I knew that would make or break you as a manager. And to be fair, it did. It gave me this kind of huge, I kind of walked away that day and gone, hang on a second, I'm doing all these things right. But yeah, sorry, off track there a little bit, but yeah, so I created my own business, and through that I managed to work with a gym in London who was really struggling. They just spent £1 million refurbing a club, had about 600 members. Now Sean from Legend, who also owned Brightline at the time, was working with Richard and David, looking at putting a new CRM in. Sean knew me from this other gym that I was working with, and we'd gone from 600 members to 3,000 in 18 months. And Richard and David said, look, we need a sales director, do you know anyone? And that's how I got introduced to them, and we sat down and had a conversation. I didn't want to come on board full time, I had my own business. It was quite nice taking consultancy fees. So we did that for 3 months. I put a few people in front of them in terms of the sales director role, and they didn't want them, and offered me a place in the business and some equity, and kind of we went from there really.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you talk about the values. What are, if they're okay to share, what are your values that you managed to work on in the end?
Yeah, so the first value is get stuck in. And what that means, and it comes back to actually a conversation I had with the team about, you get out from your journey with Gymbox whatever you want to get out from Gymbox. So on day one, I say, if you want to be the next superstar in Hollywood, brilliant. I'm all cool for that. All I ask for you whilst you're here is to work as hard as you can. If you do want a career with Gymbox, there's a route. And I use the examples of, Hayley, who's our head of talent. She started as a receptionist. She's reception manager, member services manager, and now she's head of talent, been here for 10 years. Sarah Clark, who's our project manager, phenomenally detailed, brilliant at detail. She started as a leafleter. So she's a leafleter. She came up for a reception interview. David said, I think she can be more than reception for us. She went into member services and worked through. So we've got numerous stories in the business. So get stuck in is the first one. Get out from Gymbox, whatever you want to get out from Gymbox. We then had DBAD, which is basically don't be a dick. So DBAD, we call it DBAD. And the idea is, and Dan, our manager at Finsbury Park, sums it up perfectly. And what we did a video, and it's a brand values video created by the staff. So it wasn't like a 50 grand budget, created by the staff. We had a character called Craig, who's just got a phenomenal personality, and he covers all the values. But Dan sums it up when he says, you get that one person in your team who just brings everyone down. We don't want that as a business. So our rule is really negative. We don't have negativity. There's no negativity. And if there is, we'll have a conversation and we'll decide how we go with that. But there's no negativity in business, so don't be a dick, effectively. We then had sweat the detail. Okay, so sweat the detail is about every bit of detail around the club. So every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I spend in club with GMs and teams. And I walk the club from top to bottom every single week. And the idea being is, the pavement outside, the windows, the A-frame, is it clean? Is the messaging right? Is it creased inside the poster? I mean, I've got OCD, and I tell the teams this when they start with us and say, I'm into the details. So I expect them when they do the checks in the morning, we put just enough process in the business to survive. We don't want to be a big corporate and lots of checklists, but it has to be right for members. So sweat the detail. We then have a giggle. So have a giggle is massively important. Obviously, we're a lifestyle brand. We're in the fitness industry. Original gyms in 2003 were name badge, shirt and tie. We're not that. So when a member comes into the club, they're coming in for their social time. So we have to make sure we're enjoying what we do, and we do that through regular staff parties as well. We do 2 big parties for the staff a year. Quarterly GM meetings, we all go out afterwards, socialise. It's not great for my organs, but we do a lot of it, if I'm being honest. And then the last one was anything goes, which is our tagline on all of our advertising, and that is, we're fully inclusive. Doesn't matter who you are, what background you're from, anything goes. So we don't discriminate, we don't judge. Anything goes is our kind of sign off as a business.
Yeah. I've tested you there, so I'm glad you figured
on my wrist.
Yeah. So just before we wrap up then, so I guess out of all the brands that you see, you're certainly known for being on the cutting edge, and we talked earlier when you gave us a tour about when you're starting to see other gyms doing similar things to what you're doing, it's really time to move on. You've probably held on to it a little bit too long. So what are some of the things from equipment and programming that you that you're kind of looking at over the next few years you think are likely to come in that are probably not around at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because we're doing a whole project at the moment around technology, and I don't think technology is there yet, if I'm being honest. Now, I started probably 4 or 5 years ago, looking at virtual fitness, augmented as well. There's so much out there now. There's apps for everything. There's Mirror now. There's Peloton. I mean, there's everything out there. So, what we do as a team, we sit down and think and look at what's relevant, because we don't want to do something for the sake of doing it. It has to mean something. And I think probably for us, our class programming is our strongest USP. And therefore, at some stage, we'll find a way to take that into somebody's home. Now, it won't be the old school Davina McCall. I said to the team, what I don't want to do is sit there on a TV and someone's doing a workout in their room with their iron board out. It has to be a fully immersive experience. I've gone and tested the technology, met them, talked to them about it. It's a significant investment. The technology is just not there yet for it. So I see us probably going into 2 or 3 key areas and not trying to do everything. We've dabbled with the virtual in club. If I'm being honest, I don't like it. It doesn't, the key for me in Gymbox is having these hero instructors who are the heartbeat of that class. So seeing someone on screen and 3 people on a spin bike doesn't do it for me. Everything for me is about the experience. So I think what we'll do is, over the next probably 12, 18 months, we'll see how technology develops, and then we'll jump on what we think is right for our brand at that stage.
So you think it's more sort of taking your experience beyond the walls of the club and sort of into people's, non-club lives?
Absolutely. I think we'll always evolve internally. David's phenomenal at getting out there and finding what's next. We put rigs into our clubs 5 years after others have had it. In fact, some of them are still rolling rigs out. We've had it in Covent Garden for 7 or 8 years now. So that part of it will always evolve. The floor space, the turf tracks. We put all this in quite early. It's the add-ons that I like to look at, because I think there's way more to this brand than just bricks and mortar. Absolutely.
Do you think for certainly the younger age group, do you think the traditional fitness space is changing for them? Do you think they look at doing fitness outside and at home and other areas? Are you seeing any of that? Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's way more choice. I think people are much more savvy now about fitness. You see pubs closing down and everything else. I think, what's interesting, I've watched some of your podcasts, and from a boutique perspective, so we know the target market of the boutiques is very similar to ours. Now, you look at competition in London at the moment. It's huge. There's a lot of competition, and everyone says, "Oh, it's all about the experience." Absolutely. For our product, it's about the experience, and boutiques give you experience as well. The questions I have for people in the industry at the moment are, okay, well, why is Pure Gym doing so well? In my view, there's zero experience. Not to be negative about Pure Gym, but I've been a member there and tried it, but actually, why is it doing so well? Is it just price point, convenience, etc., etc.? So I think I've seen a few people in the boutique industry say, actually, the death of the big box. Absolutely not. If you get it right, absolutely not, because people still want to do free weights. People still want to do classes with a variety that are completely unique. I still think people want to come in and do these parties and events that we offer. So I think from a business perspective, customer service. I've seen some people say previously, you don't get the customer service in big boxes. Absolutely do. It depends on how much time you focus on it. And I think Dave Wright, on one of your podcasts, said that. He said, well, why can't we do that? So I think it's a perception, and I love the boutiques. I've used them. I think they're great, but I don't think you can't get the experience in a big box. I think you just need to do it properly.
Why do you think they are so successful, some of the low costs in London still?
Location. Location's key, as we know. Absolutely. Density, footfall, and for them, price point. The question is, though, the average use of a budget, I'm not going to name names because I'll be too specific, I'll get pulled up on it otherwise, but it's probably 6 or 7 times less than us. Okay, so the model for them would be 3,000 members to break even. So they have to put 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 members in. Are those members using it? Are they getting a great experience? Maybe, maybe not. You know, from my view is I want to create an environment where people come and they come often. And if they come often, they're more likely to stay longer. If they get a great experience, they stay longer. And I think, you know, from a big box experience, I think you can combine the boutique feel along with the other stuff that the budgets offer and maintain yourself at a good value price point. I think that's important.
And what do you think as it relates to sort of central London and I guess other sort of big developed cities? What do you see happening on the fitness landscape in terms of low cost boutiques? And then I suppose I guess you hope the upper mid market's going to continue to thrive, but how would you see that playing out?
I think it will continue to grow. It will definitely continue to grow. We're probably 5 years, 6 years behind the States. I think it will be consolidated though, and I think from an investment perspective, you know, I've met with investment companies who have looked at the boutique market, and I think what they're finding is the returns that most of them get aren't investable, because to spend £1 million to get 150 grand profit isn't scalable from an equity perspective. But it's great for a private individual. I mean, if you've got 6 gyms doing 150 grand profit and you spent 6 million, it's better than the bank. You know, is that scalable to 20, 30, 40 gyms? Unless you've got the Soul Cycle model and the profits they're making and the Barry's profits, probably not. But I still see it growing. I see somebody coming in and consolidating it, taking 2 or 3 brands, cutting head offices down, having one head office, then you improve your profits. I think that will happen. But I still see it continue to grow, and I think it's great. I've got absolutely like the boutique experience. I've been there, I've done it. I don't like paying £20 a class. It'd be interesting to see what ClassPass effect has on all the boutiques as well. But on the flip side, I've got a lot of friends that use Pure Gym because it's convenient and it's a great price.
Yeah. So, final question then, Mark. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and gone on to make it possible. Outside of what we've spoken about, what would you say would be a memorable example of you escaping your own personal limits?
I think probably outside of my working life, actually. So I was with a professional football club for 7 years. Got released. wasn't good enough. Went on to go for to Portsmouth and to Bristol and try out there. And in my last kind of trial for Bristol, I got this kind of like excruciating pain in my kind of sacroiliac joint. And it put me out for about 3 months. We never got to the bottom of what it was. And doctor said it was just kind of like ligaments, tendons. So I carried on playing football non-league at a decent level for a number of years. But every year for about 3 months, 2-3 months, I'd have time off because of my back. Back to the doctors, they didn't pick up on it. I think I was 27, 28 when I went back to the doctors, and they did a blood test and they diagnosed arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, which was a reactive form of reactive arthritis in both my hips, shoulders, neck, and it was great that I knew what it was, but I was personal training as well, so it was taking me half an hour to get out of bed in the mornings, legs together, move my legs across. My wife would put the socks on for me. I mean, it was bad, and it was bad for 2 to 3 months of the year. So I had medication for it, and they were going to put me onto injections every 2 weeks, but I avoided all that. And where I get to on this really is, I managed to continue playing my non-league football career, and in 2014, I played in the FA Vase final at Wembley for the team that I was playing for at the time, and it kind of pulled everything together for me in terms of it was worth looking after myself, going through months and months of not being able to get out of bed properly. So I think that's probably the proudest or the biggest thing I've achieved in terms of getting somewhere after quite a lot of adversity, I suppose.
Yeah. How did you get? Did you manage to get it under control by?
Yeah. So I still get flare-ups, but it's under control, not through medication actually, it's probably through a bit more diet and exercise. It doesn't affect me so much. I don't play football anymore, retired 4 years ago, and training, I just know what I can and can't do. If I go into a CrossFit class, I won't walk for 2 weeks, so I have to be careful about what I do from a training perspective.
Do you have a particular diet that sort of helps that as well?
No, I just avoid certain foods. So for some reason, tomatoes bring it on. Really? Yeah, it's strange. Beer brings it on. Well, do you know what? I sometimes have the beer and just suffer with the consequences, to be honest. But yeah, I know how to control it now. Really, if I feel it, I can stretch, I can get into it, I can do certain things. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge I've overcome.
Fantastic. Well, great insights, Mark. You've got a fascinating business, and it certainly doesn't come by accident. So I wish you guys a lot of success in the future, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.